Regina Dominican School. Thank you, Dr. Linda, for inviting me. Thank you, Lizzie, for your amazing introduction. And thank you all for spending this morning with me to talk about Syria and the work that we do. And what better morning to have to speak to a full room of our young future, young women who will lead this country and lead the world in all different endeavors on this great historic election day. I'm a Syrian American writer and architect, and I lived half my life in the US and half in Syria. I'm originally from Aleppo, and I took this photo many years ago, probably when I was just a few years older than you, while I was studying architecture in Aleppo. And this view is from the top of the Citadel of Aleppo, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. This view of the old city, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right now, sadly, years later, much of what you see in this photo no longer exists. The city has been split against an east-west fault line. It's been severely destroyed over the past 5 years and has been emptied of over half of its population, over 2 million people. Over the past years, Aleppo has been the target of tens of thousands of bombs: barrel bombs, cluster bombs, chlorine bombs, incendiary bombs, bunker busters, and thousands of people have been killed, including thousands of children. This is an everyday photo that would come out of Aleppo today. In Aleppo right now, we have over 250,000 people who are effectively under siege, meaning no one can leave and no aid can enter. It's a condemnation of starvation, illness, death to hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. In just the past weeks, the bombs have continued to drop on eastern Aleppo, killing over 600 people, including 122 children. Condemnations of these attacks were called upon from world leaders across the world, all governments, and the highest UN officials, and including Pope Francis, who urged all sides to commit themselves with all their strength to protect civilians. One recent Washington Post article titled "Darkness and Fear in Aleppo as the Bombs Rain Down" read, "The bombings at night are the worst. There's no electricity in the rebel-held portion of eastern Aleppo, and the warplanes flying overhead target any light, piercing the blackness beneath. So families huddle together in the dark, gathered in one room, so that they don't die alone, listening to the roar of the jets and waiting for the bombs to fall. After they do, the rescue workers venture out, navigating the rubble and craters left by the earlier bombing, to dig out victims without headlights or lamps. They haul them to hospitals, swamped with patients being treated on the floor by doctors who barely sleep and must choose which lives to save and which to let go." As you can see from these descriptions of just one city in Aleppo, we can tell you right now that genocide is happening in Syria as we speak. All of these reasons are why no one in the world, especially a presidential candidate, should be asking, what is Aleppo? But most importantly to me, Aleppo is home. For the past 5.5 years, I, like millions of Syrians, have had to redefine what home means after losing our homes, cities, towns, and slowly our country. It has been one of the most painful experiences anyone can imagine to go through so many layers of loss, of people, memories, and some ways our core identities as Syrian. To be Syrian today means you have experienced loss. It means that you or someone you know has been killed, tortured, displaced, or forgotten by the world. I tell you all of this because I want you to know that my life didn't take the trajectory that I planned for myself when I was your age. I never expected to be a spokesperson, writer, activist, or a humanitarian for this cause. But like most Syrians, we never expected to become many of the things that we have become over the last 5.5 years. Businessmen did not expect to become fighters. University students did not expect to become citizen journalists. Mothers did not expect to become widows, and children did not expect to become orphans. We did not expect to become a country that is known to be of ruins and refugees, of the starved and the drowned. Life does not unfold as you expect it to. I studied architecture for 10 years with the dream of building a new world. I never knew this world would have to be built on the ashes of my homeland, and I never knew my job would not designing buildings, but designing programs that would rebuild communities. I never imagined that my job, like thousands of Syrians, would be to build in a time of destruction and to continue to hope in spite of the war. This has been the only way that I was able to deal and cope with this crisis, by planting life-affirming seeds of hope that has become our Syrian resistance. Today I want to talk to you about the importance of planting these seeds and how it is all of our responsibilities to make our life missions to plant seeds of hope and resist despair. When you zoom out to look at the sheer scale of the Syrian crisis, then our seeds begin to look minuscule, almost invisible, and that's when you begin to feel that the problem is too big and too complicated to make an impact. The crisis is staggering. It's on a scale larger than any other humanitarian crisis of our lifetime. And I'd like to start with a question here for you all. Can you guess how many Syrian refugees there are today? There are over 5 million Syrian refugees and over 6 million internally displaced inside Syria, which means over 11 million people no longer live in their homes. And here's another question. How many Syrian refugees were there before 2011? Any? Zero. So for everybody looking at Syria in the media, you see war and you see refugees, and it almost seems as if this problem has lasted forever, but it hasn't. Imagine 5 years ago, there were no Syrian refugees in the world. Syrian refugees are not a product of some kind of natural disaster. It didn't just appear out of nowhere last year when we saw the body of the toddler boy who was washed up on a beach in Turkey. The problem had long been existing since 2011, mostly because of the world's silence to this issue and not paying attention to it until Syrians literally began to swim across the Mediterranean to get to Europe to be able to build another life for themselves. Another thing is to understand about Syria is that over half of the refugees are urban refugees, meaning they don't live in camps and have access to humanitarian aid in an organized manner. Most of them live in squalid conditions, in unfinished homes, in overcrowded homes, and most of them live in Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon. As in all wars, the children have shouldered the heaviest burden. Thousands of children have been killed in this conflict, and over 5 million Syrian children have no adequate access to education or health care. Our Syrian human capacity diminishes every day that this conflict grinds on. With these kinds of numbers, you can imagine that in our line of work, which is to build a better future for Syria, the first thing people ask is, why bother? Nothing you can do matters. Syria has been destroyed, and if world leaders want to end this war, they would have done so years ago. And the worst thing that people say to me, mostly because it's true, is stop trying, the world doesn't care about Syria. So how do you balance these two realities? An ongoing crisis that's becoming more violent by the day and is now a global humanitarian crisis, and the real people on the ground who are struggling to survive within the war as refugees, people who cannot leave behind. We cannot leave behind, even though we know we can't help every single one. What would you do? Is it even a choice? And what if I asked a different question? Does saving one life matter when dozens of lives are lost every day? This is a question answered by action every day across Syria by the Syrian Civil Defense, also known as the White Helmets. This group of over 3,000 Syrian civilians across the country decided a few years ago that they will not make the choice to raise arms and fight, but they also would not leave Syria. They decided they would resist by saving lives. Every day, these heroes put on their white helmets and rush to sites that have been bombed to conduct emergency rescue operations, which means they dig through the rubble to pull out bodies in hope of finding one survivor. Often they are caught in the line of fire, and many have lost their lives while saving others. Often they leave sites only with corpses, but sometimes a miracle happens. Play the first video.
في أحد الأيام تعرضت منطقة الأنصاري للقصف بالبراميل المتفجرة. حصلنا نطالع العائلة الأولى والعائلة الثانية. العائلة الثالثة هي الأم والولد. هي فعلا يعني الأم كانت كثير منفعلة، عندها كثير كانت عصبية وكانت عم تصيح، يعني هي خايفة على حالها أو خايفة على ابنها. بعد الحفل الطويل صرنا نسمع صوت الولد، صوت صار يبكي الولد، صرنا نسمع صوته وكان كثير الحال صعب. بعد ما وصلنا للولد هون صار الشغل كثير بده حذر، يعني هذا ولد عمره أسبوعين أو أكثر، بأي لحظة يطب شفه أو بيموت أو بيختلف. ال 12 ساعة طبعا هي ما كانت الأرض، يعني عمل كثير حزن، يعني هي روح تعاملنا بشكل في أحد الأيام تعرضت منطقة الأنصاري للقصف بالبراميل المتفجرة. حصلنا نطالع العائلة الأولى والعائلة الثانية. العائلة الثالثة هي الأم والولد. هي فعلا يعني الأم كانت كثير منفعلة، عندها كثير كانت عصبية وكانت عم تصيح، يعني هي خايفة على حالها أو خايفة على ابنها. بعد الحفل الطويل صرنا نسمع صوت الولد، صوت صار يبكي الولد، صرنا نسمع صوته وكان كثير الحال صعب. بعد ما وصلنا للولد هون صار الشغل كثير بده حذر، يعني هذا ولد عمره أسبوعين أو أكثر، بأي لحظة يطب شفه أو بيموت أو بيختلف. ال 12 ساعة طبعا هي ما كانت الأرض، يعني عمل كثير حزن، يعني هي روح تعاملنا بشكل خطير جدا، يعني إنه طفل عمره أسبوعين يطب فوق برميل أو 3 سقوف ما يسوي شيء، يعني وكل هالضغوطات إنه هذا الطفل يطلع أو من البراميل أو من السقوف أو من كل شيء.
زرتوا الولد بعد ما قصفوا؟
ما عندنا وقت لأنه قصف.
The White Helmet's motto is to save one life is as if you saved all of humanity. Over the past 3 years, 3,000 White Helmets have saved over 70,000 lives, one person at a time. Over 150 White Helmets have lost their lives in the line of duty, including Khalid, the one who saved the miracle baby. He was killed this summer by a Russian airstrike in Idlib. The White Helmets were nominated this year for a Nobel Peace Prize, and their documentary, The White Helmets, was released on Netflix a couple months ago if you'd like to learn more about their work. This is Khalid. The baby now. He visited the baby when the baby was 1 year old, and now the baby is, I think, 2 or 3 years old. The Syrian regime and Russian warplanes deliberately target these heroes. Airstrikes have killed rescuers and destroyed ambulances and life-saving equipment that people so desperately need. Ambulances like this one, which rescued Amran Dakmish, the Syrian boy whose image went viral last August. Maybe you've seen this picture that was in all of international news. It is grim work, according to Ra'id Saleh, the leader of the White Helmets and my friend. He says, "Some may think what we're doing is heroic, but in fact it is devastating and depressing beyond belief. You are pulling corpses from the rubble. You don't know if one day that body will belong to your sister, your brother, or your friend. This is why there's no choice but to act, even in the smallest ways." At Karam Foundation, we've witnessed the ripple effects of our work over the past 5 years. The results are small in scale, but staggering in impact. We've watched Syrians build new lives, restart educations, and rekindle their dreams again, all on their sheer resilience and our unconditional belief in their power to determine their own futures. When I co-founded Karam in 2007, the idea was big, to spread generosity around the world. Karam means generosity in Arabic. We did it in small but effective ways that greatly impacted people's lives around the globe, from funding hundreds of microcredit loans for women in the Middle East and Africa, supporting schools for girls in Afghanistan, to helping newly resettled refugees from Iraq come into Boston. It was an amazing privilege to be able to choose causes just because we believed in them. But in 2011, we no longer had that luxury. Our cause chose us, and that cause was Syria. And our team had to restructure Karam to focus on Syria. Our responsibility grew tremendously as the need kept growing. Next slide. Karam is a non-political, non-religious organization, and we believe the rights to freedom and dignity are the rights of every human being on the planet. Over the past 5.5 years, we have delivered aid to hundreds of thousands of people in the form of food, water, winter packages, infant formula, and we've rebuilt schools inside Syria. We fund water wells, bakeries, urban farms that allow Syrians to reclaim their dignity and livelihoods. In 2013, we developed a creative therapy and physical wellness mission program for Syrian kids in a small border town called Reyhanli, which is right on the border of Turkey and Syria. It used to have a population of 30,000 people, and now it has a population of over 100,000 people. Over 60,000 Syrian refugees now live there. To date, we have run 8 missions with over 130 international mentors who come from across the world: artists, journalists, dentists, writers, athletes, chefs, architects, entrepreneurs, coders, and more. These mentors come to give their skills to Syrian refugee kids, but most of all, they come to tell them that they are not invisible. They come to tell Syrian kids that they matter. We believe in providing innovative education, entrepreneurial training to Syrian refugees, especially the youth, motivates them to become productive citizens in their host countries now, and hopefully leaders of a brighter Syria in the future. Our work is deeply rooted in investing in the community and evolving our programs with the communities. The Syrian refugee community we serve are co-authors of our program. We believe that they need to be co-authors of their own futures. This summer, one of our projects was to create a mural on a Syrian refugee school in southern Turkey, and this is a very strong example how art, creativity, and community can create something much greater than the sum of the parts. I have a video on this, but maybe we should wait. Should I just show it at the end? So we can, I'll show it to you at the end so we keep the flow going. This is Mustafa. He's a high school student, just like you, and he's one of the students that we came to give a coding workshop 2 years ago, and when our mentors came in to teach the kids how to code, it turns out Mustafa had already taught himself 5 coding languages when he lived in Syria from when he was in 5th grade. So he quickly became an assistant to the coders, and now 2 years later, he still teaches coding to the younger students in his school using the computer lab that we built for them. This is Raghad, who we met her 2 years ago, and she was in 10th grade, and her dream is to be a novelist. She had handwritten 4 short novels in notebooks in Syria, but her mother burned her notebooks before they fled because she was scared to be stopped at a checkpoint with so many books and handwritten notes. She felt that she'd never be a writer again. And when she took our writing workshop with journalists in 2014, the journalists who work for the New York Times and the Associated Press and are acclaimed writers in their own way, confirmed to Raghad that losing your work at such a young age, or losing your work really any time in your life as a writer, is very common, and it's happened to the most famous writers of our lifetimes and in history. And they encouraged her to write again, and they taught her how to start a blog, which she still keeps now to be able to preserve all of her writing, and she wants to still become a writer and a journalist. Others still connected to the internet for the first time in their lives. They learned they could attend courses online to teach them English and Turkish, even from within their small storefront homes. They learned that even in their isolated environments, they could access the world. And now, each time we go back to Reyhanli, Turkey, we get to see the kids who have grown with us. They remember our workshops and what we created in them. They remember their favorite mentors and are delighted when they see a mentor come back a second or third time. The teachers at the school treat us with the trust they have lost on other fly-by organizations that come to hand out stuff and leave, never to be heard of again. It's a magical feeling to have these strong bonds in a place where so much is defined by what we have lost, not what we have gained. I personally give a workshop called Mapping Home when I go on these missions, and I've been doing that since 2013, and I have all of the students pretend to be architects or urban planners, and we draw our home from memory, and most recently we have everybody draws their future homes. And this is a boy named Omar Hamwi who was able to draw his home with me in a workshop. This is his floor plan of his house. When we first met Omar and we asked him when he was in 5th grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he answered, I want to grow up as fast as possible, become 18 and die, because I have no hope for my future. And through our workshops and our mentorship, we worked with him, and 1 year later we met Omar again, and we had him do the exercise of drawing the floor plan of his home. And as you can see, he drew his home, and he drew a car outside with the writing police, the way it's written in Turkish. And he said, I want to be a policeman because I can defend the country being a policeman. And he drew a slide and swings and a little boy with a remote control police car. And we asked him, who is that? And he said, that's my son. Amar went from not believing there was a future to remembering this exercise that helped him build a future in his mind. And if I hadn't been back that day 1 year later, I would never have known about this impact. These ripple effects exist everywhere in our work, of thinking small and deep impact, of investing in a community for the long term. There are probably dozens of kids in Reyhanli whose lives were impacted by a writing mentor or an artist, a coach, a dentist, or a coder. Kids who can imagine a concrete future for themselves because of the people we bring into their worlds. This is what inspires us to continue despite all of the odds against us. Our latest idea that we're building right now as we speak, and it's a very exciting thing for me. I just got back from Turkey a couple of weeks ago, and we've taken this idea of the bi-yearly workshops and taking mentors into schools and working with kids for a week to be able to do this long term. And we're building right now something called the Karam House, which is a place for Syrian refugee teens, both boys and girls, to be able to access all of the technology, the skills, the mentorship, and the community that we've been working on building for the past 3 years. And it's right now under construction. Hopefully it's going to be open at the beginning of the year, and we're really excited about it. The essence of the Karam House is basically a place for ideas to flourish, for people to imagine a better future and be able to find the tools to make it that way. And one thing that I'd like to leave with you today for later, if you're all teenagers, and if you think of ideas and ways of things that you would have liked to have, or you have that you access in your school or in your community that helps you, I'd love it if you would be able to email me and let me know what those things are as a teenager, of what things that you would like to have in your life or what you do have access to that makes a difference. Because at the end of the day, Syrian refugee teens are just like any other teens in the world. They have their everyday worries that you guys have, and they don't have a place to even express their emotions about just being a teen because they are going through such a tough time. So I leave this challenge to you all to reach out to me and let me know what you think the Karam House should be. And before I end, I want to go back to the essence of why I'm here. Why does Syria matter, and why should Syria matter to you? Syria really is more than just Syria today. It is the symbol of the utter failure of the international community to act in the interests of a civilian population which is being slaughtered. Watching Syria, one cannot help but ask very tough questions that challenge our collective humanity. What are we willing to watch happen from the sidelines in silence? Things like starvation. How is it possible in 2016 that people are dying of starvation because the regime does not allow the UN to administer humanitarian aid across conflict lines? And how is it possible that over 1 million Syrians are living under siege, almost entirely imposed by the Syrian regime? These people are living without access to food, water, healthcare services, education, and are often left to die. And the most vulnerable population are the children and the elderly. How is it possible that over 4,000 people have drowned trying to get from Turkey to Greece, hundreds in 2016 alone? Syrians are drowning because they simply do not have the right passport. People have to risk their lives and their children's lives, spending everything they have on a smuggler, a life jacket, and a spot on an overcrowded, leaky boat to reach Greece and then walk sometimes to Germany. And even these borders now have been closed. In these refugees' lives, their smartphones are their lifeline. As one refugee told me, WhatsApp is everything. So the next time you read about how Syrian refugees are not that desperate because they have smartphones, you will know that the phone is the most important object they have to survive. The UN was born out of the premise of never again. Never again would a global community watch genocide in silence. The UN was built so that what is happening in Syria would never be allowed to happen. Where are these rights, these universal human rights for Syrians today, and how is any of this possible? But it is possible, and sadly, this is our reality, as if we are living on another planet. And although it's very easy to forget history, everyone should never forget that this crisis began because Syrians across Syria decided to protest peacefully against an oppressive regime that had ruled them with an iron fist for over 46 years. I'd like all of you to really think about that on our election day. So many people around the world are in prisons, are under oppression, are being killed, not just in Syria, because they dream of having a democracy where they can go and vote freely, safely, and without fear. It's a huge privilege we have as Americans, and we should never, ever take it for granted. After watching 5.5 years of violence that is ripping my country apart, I do not believe in the UN or any political body that claims to have the interest of the people at heart. The most admirable and brilliant and resilient acts have been initiated by the people themselves, the people who express their frustration and decide to do something about it, the Syrian civil defense who have decided to put on their white helmets and dig for survivors in the rubble, the handful of doctors who continue to perform surgeries on dirty hospital floors with no electricity, equipment, and with lines of people waiting in pain while the bombs rain down, the people who deliver our aid to families inside Syria every day. The students we work with who, despite losing everything they have ever known, despite knowing that they are unwanted in the entire world, still look towards the future and dream of achieving their goals. Every 6 months I go to tell the Syrian youth I work with in Rehande, you are the future leaders of Syria. Looking out at all of you today is no different. You are the future leaders of the world. You have many privileges and freedoms that they don't, but you also have many of the same challenges. Will you be strong and honest advocates for those whose voices are fainter than yours? Will you demand that the promise of never again, the promise of world peace, of justice and human rights, of health and education for all, are realized instead of forgotten? Here's a short list of things that you could do today to make a difference in Syria. Like Lizzie, you could volunteer for a Syrian organization. We have over 100 Syrian refugee families living in north side of Chicago. Most of them have children. Most of them could use a helping hand, a friend, somebody to help them navigate through their new school systems. Talk to a Syrian. If you have questions about Syria, reach out to Syrians around you, connect with us, connect with people on social media, and really try to understand the crisis from their perspective. You can advocate for Syria every day and redirect people to read the news on what's happening and not forget what's happening every day. Volunteering and always fundraising is always helpful. We have many, many young people like you who've done very simple fundraisers that do two things: raise money for programs that are essential to Syrians, as well as raising awareness about the crisis, when you talk to people and tell them that you care about Syria, so many other people will care because of that. Your voices have influence, and I urge you all to use them. The possibilities are endless and in your reach. Think about community-driven impact. Find your passion, your niche in the world where you can take your education and skills and make a difference to people's lives. This is our collective obligation to recreate memories for kids like Amar who dreams of a future instead of death, to mentor people like Mustafa who will probably turn around and invent something that will be for all of us, and to encourage girls like Ragha to keep writing. Hope is stronger than any other force that tries to kill it, for without hope, how could we possibly go on? I just want to thank you all. I want to play the video before we end, and then we can go to some questions. This video is about the project we did this summer, a mural for a school inside in Turkey, right on the border.
My name is Luke. I'm an artist from South Africa. I've been invited to a small town in Turkey by the Karam Foundation to be a part of one of their many education projects held in schools for Syrian refugee children. The idea for the mural is to use these ribbons of color to convey concepts and themes that the school and the children aspire to. The children were given the responsibility to fill up these ribbons of color with messages and pictures that best represent this specific theme. By giving the kids this responsibility, they get to exercise their creativity, they get to be a part of something big and special, they get to take ownership of the mural, and most importantly, the information in it. They also get to feel really proud of brightening up the atmosphere of their school. And lastly, everyone gets to have tons of fun. Because the school teaches English, Turkish, and Arabic, all the messages were written in these three languages. Even the teachers got a chance to paint. They got to paint the sort of further out of reach areas where the kids couldn't reach, because the building's really high. We even had some Turkish kids from the neighborhood help paint on the ribbons. I was really happy with what the kids worked. They did some really unique things. They were quite eager to paint, especially the really young kids. They were from start to finish, just painting, heads down, painting. Didn't even need a break. Just going for it, coming with ideas constantly. Mohammed took me around the mural and read some of the stuff that's obviously in Arabic and translated it for me. And there was some really special stuff. The kids have got big hearts, and hopefully this mural will help them have a better future, to influence them to have a better future.
نحب إن أطلع المستقبل بالدكتور أكبر، لهيك أنا حبيت إني أعبر عن طريق رسم مشان أحقق حلم، أرسم مستشفى وممرضة وأدوات الدكتور.
It's now the last day of the mural workshop, and everyone's been having a lot of fun painting massive ribbons of color all over their school. These Karam projects really make a difference for these kids. This is my third one I've been on. I think they're very special, and they really help with the healing process for these Syrian kids.
I wanted to talk a little bit just a couple words about this mural is that when we came to do this in the school, they were very doubtful about us painting on their school. They didn't know what we were going to do, and they were worried that the neighbors were going to dislike the school even more because they do live in a Turkish community. You guys can watch that later. And they weren't very welcomed as neighbors because the Turkish people see all these refugees come in and they're worried about them being there and worried about having a Syrian school in the midst of their neighborhood. And what happened was when they began to paint, slowly when they started using Turkish words, kids started coming out. It was summertime and they asked to paint too because they wanted to play. And so we had Turkish kids coming out from the neighborhood and painting out the mural. Then the parents came out and they met our team and they were so excited and so happy that, you know, Turkish language, English, and Arabic were used all together and that their kids were having a good time playing with the Syrian kids. And then they went and met the administration of the school and were also happy to know that the school is very proud to be in this neighborhood and to be welcomed into this neighborhood and to be able to function, to educate Syrian refugee kids. And this mural actually created, it's such a small thing, it's painting on walls, it's a one-week project. Luke came from South Africa to do this mural, he's done 3 of them for us, but it really created a sense of healing in the community, and it's a sense of pride for the school to have something beautiful and colorful, to be able to come to school every day and have that and have those memories of actually being part of creating it. So everything that we do in our projects, we try to incorporate the community as much as we can and have them have ownership over these projects, and they take on a life of their own beyond whatever it is that we even imagined it when we planned it. So that's the story of that mural. We're really proud of it. I hope you learned about Syria today, learned about the Karam Foundation, what we do, what you can do. I hope that you're inspired to do good things for yourselves, for different causes that you are passionate about. Never think that you can't have an impact or make a difference. Every single one of you can make a difference to a cause that you feel passionate about. The most important thing is to do something. And thank you so much for having me today.